And now, it's the Forest City Tribune Podcast with your host, John Thomas Hill. And welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful and wacky Tuesday night. Yes, it has been quite a day already. For those of you who don't know, Germany destroyed Brazil 7-1 in soccer. Quite a quite a destruction there, to say the least. So, anyhow, tonight's show is not about soccer, it's about wrestling. And there are a lot of concerns these days about the WWE and its financial health, the future of the WWE Network, and, in my honest opinion, I think a lot of this is overblown. First of all, the WWE Network is a big risk, but I think it's eventually going to pay off big time. Once we get through the difficult stages of the renewals of the 6-month subscriptions, I think people are going to realize that, it's actually better if they were to lose some and to actually maybe raise the price a bit to make it to where people who are going to keep it and establish it to the point where it's something that truly matters. And that's my opinion. I honestly think that the biggest mistake that they made is probably overpromising things. They were expecting 1 million subscribers, and it didn't pan out. But it's a great idea nonetheless, because what you've got is something that, in my honest opinion, is going to be a major, major player, not only in professional wrestling, but in all of entertainment for a long time to come, because this could be the very start of the networks breaking off and putting their own content out there. Now, the interesting part is that this isn't a brand new idea. ESPN ideally would love to be able to bring out Watch ESPN, or they like to call it ESPN3.com, and make it a subscription service to where you don't have to have a cable or satellite subscription to sign up for it or to get it. The problem with that, of course, is would it be enough to mitigate the potential loss of revenue from cable companies that drop ESPN, which is unlikely because ESPN is a much bigger player, much bigger revenue generator than the WWE. And here's the thing. If ESPN were to go subscription-based service with Watch ESPN, and they would probably have to make some adjustments. I mean, you'd have to make some minor adjustments. Perhaps you couldn't put NFL football on the app, or maybe Major League Baseball or NBA or something like that. But I think eventually it will change, and it will become something even bigger than it is right now, which is where you can watch ESPN pretty much anywhere, and you don't even have to have a cable or satellite subscription to have it. You'll just pay, $5 a month, $7 a month for that right, and you get all this on-demand coverage as well as live streaming of not just one network, but perhaps, I think maybe even up to 5 networks. So the WWE will eventually succeed with the WWE Network. It's just going to take time to build it. You know, in my honest opinion, I think the hardest part right now is trying to get more people to subscribe, to get those people to renew, which I'm going to renew because I like the network. I like the fact that they have a deep library. It's going to be adding even more. They're about to start the Monday Night War series. And I think that'll eventually bring in more Nitros, maybe even old editions of WCW Saturday Night, or back when it was NWA World Championship Wrestling back in the 80s. Bring out some Mid-Atlantic stuff from the early days, and really showcase this stuff. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when this stuff comes and, when it really takes hold and more people go, yeah, I think, because Netflix struggled at first with its online streaming. But that back then it was mainly, a DVD in the mail service. Now, when you think of Netflix, it's almost always streaming. Yes, you can still get DVDs in the mail, but it's not as big of a business to them as it used to be. So, on to the other stuff, which is the fact that they are not exactly jumping for joy in the financial aspects of the company right now. The fact that they didn't get as many subscribers to the network as they'd hoped, plus the inevitable losses in pay-per-view numbers because of having all the pay-per-views on WWE Network, and plus the fact that they didn't get the kind of deal they were looking for in their broadcasting deal with NBC Universal. That includes USA and Sci-Fi. I think the biggest problem was with that broadcast deal was the fact that they oversold it. They're not on the same level as traditional sports leagues are. They wanted to get a deal that was similar to the sports leagues, but they're not sports. They're entertainment primarily. And they're, in a sense, more reality-based because, it brings in a lot of ratings. It's USA Network's most watched program. The Sci-Fi Network's most watched program most times is SmackDown. So here you have this conundrum. Yes, they're in most cases their programming outranks any of the major sports, save for the NFL, on cable. Yet they're not going to get the same kind of deal as the NBA did with Turner and ESPN. They're not going to get the same kind of deal the NHL got with NBC. You're not going to get the same kind of deal with Major League Soccer and EPL did with their respective networks. MLS just recently signed a new deal to go to Fox and ESPN, which should be interesting to say the least. So part of the reason I think that WWE didn't really get as much money as they thought they were going to get was that NBC Universal and the other networks are saving up money to make a run at the NBA contract, which is coming up in about a year or so. The rights run out after the 2015-2016 season. So that's just 2 years away. But the rights is going to be determined sometime in the next year or so, and that's going to be a big, big contract. And NBC just doled out a ton of money before the WWE negotiations were finished. They just doled out a lot of money to retain the Olympics until 2032. that was a huge piece of money. Several $billion to keep that. And while it makes a lot of sense on a business aspect, it sucks for the WWE because basically what it does, it means that what you have is less money on the table at play, and because they could go, well, you can try Spike, and Spike already has TNA Wrestling for far cheaper. And as much as they'd like to say, well, we could bring in more revenue, but how much more is it going to cost? So was it really the kind of competition that the WWE was hoping for? Probably not, especially when the economy is still slowly recovering. Ad rates aren't what they once were, and there's a lot of competition out there. And the fact is NBC wants to make a run at NBA rights, and if they do get those rights, it helps NBC Sports Network. It could potentially help USA on another night when they don't have Raw on. So that remains to be seen. I mean, it's one of those crazy things about broadcasting today is a lot of the leagues want to, and a lot of the networks want to wrap up these rights until well into the next decade. So, I mean, the current NFL deals don't expire until 2022. And some of the college deals go well into the middle of the next decade. So, and it used to be you'd get broadcast deals for like 4 years or so. Now they're going upwards of 10 years. And a lot of it's because of all the increased competition. They want to lock in to keep themselves afloat because they see what's coming. They see Netflix, they see Hulu, they see other potential services that haven't been invented yet that could potentially wipe them out down the road. And they want to avoid that because broadcasting generates a lot of money, but also costs a lot of money to produce. So, but ESPN was never really a serious player, I don't believe, in WWE negotiations, or I should say ABC, Disney. Where were they going to put it? I mean, really, do you want to put it on ABC Family? By the way, to go off on a bit of a tangent, why does ABC Family still have the 700 Club? I mean, can't they just buy out Pat Robertson and get rid of those scumbags? I mean, Pat Robertson to me is pretty much a con man. He's not really that religious. He's gotten so old in age. I think he's pretty much damn senile nowadays. But anyhow, back to wrestling. And getting away from the business aspect of it, let's go to the creative part. John Cena, being the WWE World Champion right now, because of Daniel Bryan being out because of an injury. Makes a lot of sense. It's a conservative, safe play. The rumors are they're leading up toward a match at SummerSlam between John Cena and Brock Lesnar, where Lesnar wins the title and then defends it again at the September pay-per-view. And Night of Champions, I should say, which is, ironically enough, going to be the pay-per-view that's 6 months into this this crazy thing called WWE Network. And they're also pushing Roman Reigns and Triple H, that match, to Night of Champions. So it remains to be seen. John Cena is a transitional champion. He's basically holding the belt until someone else is positioned to take it from him, whether that be Brock Lesnar, whether that be Daniel Bryan, whether that be Roman Reigns, whether that be Seth Rollins, whether it be somebody else. he's a placeholder right now. He's a hell of a placeholder, but he's a placeholder because Daniel Bryan is probably going to be out a lot longer than originally anticipated. And it sucks because Daniel Bryan had that great moment at WrestleMania 30. Deserves better than what he got because he's such a damn good talent. The underdog finally wins the battle after the odds being against him for so damn long. So it's a big deal. It really is. Now, Chris Jericho's back, in case you hadn't noticed. Mainly because Daniel Bryan's out, they got Jericho to come back. Probably ponied up a good bit of money for that, which is very smart because Jericho brings credibility. He can help build a new star with Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt, his feud with John Cena, the problem is that they didn't give Bray Wyatt the win in a clean win over John Cena. And that was the problem, is that they didn't give him that clean win over the established man in the WWE. And it kind of hurt Bray Wyatt a bit. I mean, there's always politics and all that, and John Cena's probably no different than, say, Hogan and Flair and others back in the day. But there comes a time when you've got to establish new stars to where when Cena steps away finally, the company has main event talent to push things over the top of the hill. So that's what it's all about. So the Damien Sandow situation, I hate to say it, but they've got a guy that's really has been a guy that really could become the next really great superstar, and they've pretty much thrown it away. This guy won Money in the Bank last year, and they screwed it up. Now, maybe it was the same thing with Dolph Ziggler. They were kind of worried about injuries. I don't know. But Sandow shouldn't be comic relief. Unless they're planning on something to where he turns bloody serious and becomes, I don't know what the hell they're going to do with him. It's a shame because Sandow has such potential. And yet, for some reason, he never really got over that hump. Same with a bunch of people. Sheamus is kind of on the downside of it. He had a chance to be a really serious main event star, and it didn't happen. He had his moments, but, now he's basically an upper mid-carder at best. And there's worries that the same thing's going to happen to Cesaro, Is Cesaro, who's got such a huge future allegedly, has the crowd, is over with the crowd and such, and yet he's kind of, I don't know, he's sort of in limbo right now. What plans do they have for Cesaro? I mean, he's playing second fiddle to a man who's not even wrestling right now. This whole 21-1 stuff, which, let's face it, it's kind of gotten old. What else? I think when you get right down to it, the tag team division really needs a shot of new talent. I mean, really, the only ones you've got right now are the Usos, who are the champs. You've got the Wyatt family, who will probably be the champs very soon. You got Rybaxel, which is sort of the perennial opponent for Goldust and now Stardust, the artist formerly known as Cody Rhodes. You need more talent. You need more tag teams. And it's just for some reason they don't really want to invest heavily in the tag team division. And that's the problem. If you don't really invest in it, who cares? Who cares who the tag team champs are if you don't have teams that are vying for that top position? Also, the same thing goes for the other titles, like the IC title, which was, recently stripped from Wade Barrett, who, is out with another injury. That could potentially end his career. If these keep mounting up, it's going to shorten his career. And then you've got the U.S. title on Sheamus, which sounds more like it's more of a placeholder than anything else, because he's actually defending it more than Dean Ambrose did, but it's not Dean Ambrose's fault. It's the fact that they didn't actually let him defend it. So what are these Shield members? I like what they're doing. First of all, Seth Rollins is going to stay heel for a while, and then Dean Ambrose is going to stay face for a while, but eventually those two are going to switch. Maybe in a double switch together, who knows? But more than likely, somewhere down the road, one's going to turn heel, the other's going to turn face. Ambrose is much better at being a heel than he is at being a babyface. Rollins, I think, is a better babyface than he is a heel. Now, they're both good at what they're doing. I mean, Ambrose being a bit of a psycho, going for revenge against the guy that destroyed the Shield. That is a great, great storyline right there. They could potentially keep that going for a long time, to where Ambrose makes sure that Rollins can never cash in that Money in the Bank. Wouldn't it be amazing if he doesn't cash it in at all? He never gets a shot at cashing it in, and every time he tries, Dean Ambrose is there to stop him. So that leads to an interesting situation. Do they pull the trigger and keep Seth Rollins from cashing in the whole time? Or do they have it to where down the road there's a match between Rollins and Ambrose to where the suitcase is on the line? So that remains to be seen. In my opinion, I think you're going to see more than likely there's going to be a match for the suitcase, and I think Ambrose will eventually win it, and eventually I think that'll be where he turns. Somewhere down the road he's going to cash it in and maybe even turn heel in that aspect. What about Roman Reigns? I think they're building towards him having his big moment at WrestleMania 31. I think that he is going to be the next big superstar, or at least they're going to try to make him the next big superstar. And in my honest opinion, I think they have got a guy that really has a tremendous amount of potential. He really needs to work on his promos a bit more to really make them stand out. He's shown improvement in the promos, but he's really got to pop that promo to where it's a must-see promo. So, and he's got potential to get there. He's just got to really work at it. So we'll see what happens on that aspect. What else? Well, they have on the WWE Network now Saturday Night's Main Event. I actually started watching part of it. And the thing is, The biggest difference between Saturday night's main event and Clash of the Champions was Saturday night's main event always came off as being just an extended episode of Superstars or whatever other show the WWE put on. You know, there were main event caliber matches, sure, but it didn't have the feel of being a free pay-per-view. Unlike with Clash of the Champions, at least the first few Clash of the Champions felt like, hey, you're getting a free pay-per-view on television. The very first Clash of the Champions had one of the greatest World Championship matches of all time between Sting and Ric Flair. And a match that really made Sting a superstar. And Ric Flair helped bring Sting along. That is a match, if you have never seen it, you really need to see it. It's a tremendous match. That's one of those that every wrestling student, whether you're going to go in the ring or just a fan of the industry, you need to watch at least once because you'll understand where we come from. You can learn a lot from it. So what's in store for the WWE the rest of the year? Well, we're probably going to see some more future endeavored people. I would guess probably that Zack Ryder might be on the chopping block. There may be another surprise or two leaving as well. Santino Marella retired, and there's been talk that he might stick around in a non-wrestling capacity. Whether that actually remains to be seen, I don't know. But the big deal is CM Punk's contract comes off the books at the end of this, I think it's the 17th of this month. And that's going to help because he makes a lot of money. Well, there has been talk they may do to him what they did with Rey Mysterio. The fact is that, A, they don't want to alienate Punk because there's still a lot of potential for a lot of money to be made there. And B, financially, you'd be shooting yourself in the foot paying somebody to stay home for another year and not do anything for you. Whereas if you let his contract lapse, and he's not getting paid anyway right now except for merchandise, his cut of the merchandise. So he doesn't actually have to come back, but I think he will eventually come back in a non-wrestling capacity. He'll sign a Legends deal. He'll do a lot of appearances. It'll basically be a situation where he works in a way that he will like. I think in a lot of ways he'll probably be more happier because, hey, he's on the road, gets to see his wife more often, which is, by the way, his wife is AJ Lee, who recently returned to the WWE, which is, of course, fueled the inevitable speculation that he's coming back. I honestly don't think he'll be back anytime soon. I think that if he does come back, it'll be a situation where it's, kind of a surprise, or it'll be one, either he'll walk out and everybody will be shocked, like with Jericho, or the news will be broken so quickly that it'll be for most everyone else a surprise. But for others, it'll be like they'll be calling their friends up to tune in because, hey, they found out that, yes, indeed, Punk is really, really, truly going to be showing up on Raw. So when that will happen remains to be seen. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I think it'll be until probably the end of baseball season before hockey really gets going. The Cubs are going to be out of contention, or out of the playoffs. The Blackhawks season will just start to begin, and the WWE will probably go, we could still do a lot. I think there's been some communication. Definitely AJ Lee's probably been an intermediary between the two. I think some of that is basically just trying to keep in touch, going, how you doing? What are your thoughts about maybe coming back? Where are you at with that? I think Vince and company are playing it very smart because they know that Punk is a very charismatic guy that will put butts in seats, will generate publicity, will get people to buy stuff. In my opinion, I think, though, that he is still trying to bring back his past. Look what happened to Jericho. He was out for two and a half years away from the business when he left. And he stayed away for that full 2.5 years. He pretty much did not even consider going back for almost the entire 2.5 years. And then you've got others who've been out and stayed out for a while. Some because they had to, like Edge. Others because they just really got tired of it. The CM Punk is nearing 40. Eventually, he knows he's got to live with the injuries. He's going to be waking up in the next few years. He's going to be waking up having to take forever to get out of bed. It's not as easy when you're getting banged up. I know plenty of athletes who it takes a while to get out of bed in the morning because it hurts so much. And wrestlers are even worse because they've taken so much punishment. There was an article about Kevin Nash, who was on a recent trip to Europe, and he tried walking around with his family all those miles and such, and had to finally tap out and say, I'm just going to sit on a table, wait for you guys to get done, and just kick back and relax. His body won't let him do it anymore. He's not a young man. He's in his 50s now. And you probably won't ever see him wrestle again. He had his moment at the Royal Rumble and had a brief feud with CM Punk that really didn't go anywhere. But it was kind of interesting to see him back. But at the same time, he is he's done. It's like with Hogan. Hogan can't go anymore. Flair realistically can't go, but there'll be people who think that he can, and he thinks he can. But realistically, the man's nearly 70. He can't go anymore. It's like Jerry Lawler. Jerry's for a guy his health. He had a heart attack almost 2 years ago now. But you got to realistically look at that as it was a situation where it wasn't because of his health, his eating that caused it. It was basically he got an elbow from Dolph Ziggler that hit in the right spot that caused the heart attack, or led to the heart attack, I should say. Which was Dolph Ziggler didn't intentionally mean to do that, obviously. Dolph's probably dropped dozens of elbows since then, and nobody even come close to it. So, who knows? Anyhow, but let me touch on a topic that's very interesting as well. There's a lot of backlash against the commentating team of Michael Cole, JBL, and Jerry the King Lawler. In my honest opinion, Jerry Lawler has not been the same since he turned babyface. Jerry Lawler was at his best when he was the heel, when he was the bad guy, when he was, now as a good guy, he's sort of the voice of reason in a sense. And you don't really need, Michael Cole being the heel was kind of bad. Michael Cole doesn't do play-by-play that much anymore. It's sort of like he doesn't call the matches like JR did, or even like anybody else does. You got to have, you can't just go by what's being said in the ring alone. Yeah, but you got to, I don't know if it's Vince directing him that way, but to me, Michael Cole was at his best. And Michael Cole, when he was Taz back on SmackDown, was really, really good. They were a great team, in my opinion. JBL on his own, I think, is really, really good as a commentator, as a heel commentator. Jerry Lawler, in my opinion, would be better suited, doing interviews backstage and being on the panel, and maybe doing some shilling of merchandise and such, and maybe hosting the panel. I mean, Renee Young is good at what she does, but I think it was a shame that they got rid of Josh Matthews. Matthews really should be going to ESPN, in my opinion, because he's good at what he does. He's really good, and it shocked me when they let him go, because he was an institution. He could do host those panels. He could doing commentating on documentaries. He could do a whole hell of a lot. So, and Renee Young, they got to be careful, because Renee Young, when her contract is up, ESPN may decide to place a little call to Ms. Young and say, hey, would you like to come to work for the worldwide leader? That could happen. And the two that's doing Tom and Byron, I can't think of Tom's last name right offhand. The do main event, they're all right, but they're kind of bland, to be honest with you. And this is where CM Punk would really come in handy. And this is what I think eventually is going to happen. The Miz, let's face it, he's not really that great in the ring. I mean, he's a mid-card at best, but if you groom him to eventually take the place of Michael Cole, keep him as maybe as a baby face, or maybe have CM Punk do play-by-play and train him to do it, and have the Miz be the bad guy. Who knows? Or have something to where CM Punk is the baby face, the Miz is the bad guy as a commentator. Put a commentator in there that actually knows what they're doing. Maybe like, I don't know, Joey Styles. Oh, that experiment didn't go over too well, because Joey Styles actually wanted to do wrestling play-by-play and not just listen to what Vince says. Now, here's the big question that a lot of people from time to time speculate about, especially in light of the news lately of the financial woes of the WWE. What's going to happen when Vince finally turns over the company fully to Stephanie and Triple H? Well, Stephanie is controlling the business aspect for the most part. Triple H has got a handle on most of the creative, but the big stuff still lies with Vince. The big decisions lie with Vince. That's and in a sense that's almost a bad thing, because Vince is notorious for changing his mind. And I think that within the next couple of years, you're going to start seeing a political process take place to where Triple H is eventually going to win out. Because a lot of the reason why Vince still has a lot of yields a lot of creative power isn't because he owns the company. It's because a guy by the name of Kevin Dunn, who is head of their television production, has a lot of influence on Vince, and he and Triple H don't exactly get along. As long as Vince McMahon is in power, Kevin Dunn has a job. Once Vince finally turns in the reins, Kevin Dunn's days are numbered, probably. So there's office politics and everything, which is always the case, sadly. But in my opinion, I think Triple H, being such a historian of professional wrestling, and the fact that it's very soon he's going to have to realize that he can't wrestle anymore, not even on a part-time basis. I think that creatively things will get better. We're in a type of period, I think, right now, similar to 94, 95, where the WWE they got this new generation. Cena's sort of in the Hogan position. There's no WCW for Cena to jump to. And Cena's not nearly as bad as Hogan. I mean, yeah, he does yield some political power, but the fact is, Cena has a legitimate reason. He's still got the kids. He's still got a lot of the women. He's still got a lot of the military folks. He may very well be the smartest marketed sports entertainer there's ever been, because he sells a ton of merchandise. He gets booed out of the building, but yet there's always a "Let's Go Cena" chant by the kids. But yet people still buy his stuff. It's the conundrum. The adult fans hate his guts. Now, I'm not one of those that bash Cena. I don't think of him as the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I don't hate his guts. I think he's well deserving of his main event status. When put with the right talent, he is a tremendous, tremendous wrestler. He has got great charisma. The only problem I have with him is that he tends to be too much of a goof sometimes in his promos. That's the only problem I have with John Cena. Now, what happens when Cena retires, and which is, I think, is coming sooner than later, and I think when it's going to happen will probably be somewhere along the lines of 2 or 3 years. I just don't see. I just really don't see Cena sticking around for 10 more years. I think he's going to eventually move on to do films. He won't be the next Rock, but I think he'll have the kind of career that Stone Cold's had. He does films, he does reality shows, he is still making a lot of money. And by the way, can I praise Stone Cold's podcast? If you've never listened to it, give it a listen. It's awesome. It is tremendously awesome. The guy is a great interviewer. Surprised the hell out of me he's such a great interviewer. He sticks to the wrestling, but he does also bring in some UFC guys. I'd love to see him bring in more sports guys and to really diversify his podcast. Jim Ross, also has a great podcast. I highly recommend that. Of course, also Jericho, who really, if he ever decides to leave professional wrestling and the rock and roll life, he could be a great radio personality. And this has been so successful that WWE has considered doing podcasts. And this is the thing about CM Punk. And a lot of folks are so missing CM Punk, but CM Punk's probably never going to wrestle again. He's banged up. He's fought a very hard style for 15 years. From the time he started in 99 all the way till now. It's a very physical, rough, aggressive style. And for most of that, he rarely took any time off. And it's like with Daniel Bryan. I think Daniel Bryan doesn't have that many years. Think about it. When Mick Foley really became a superstar, from the time he debuted in 96 to the time he sort of semi-retired in 2000, that was only 4 years. And he had a 12-year career before that. Daniel Bryan had a career for about a decade before he went to the WWF or WWE. And he's getting up there. He's in his 30s now. And the time comes when you know you got to go, okay, time has come to hang it up. I think he's got, if he comes back from this neck injury, don't be surprised if he doesn't wrestle more than 2 more years, because he's married. He's a married man now. He saves his money up. And eventually it's going to become, hey, Bree can make more money. He could, still make appearances, sign a Legends deal with the WWE, and he'll always have that WrestleMania moment to fall back on, which will, it hopefully will not be like Chris Benoit's. Yeah, that irony was not lost on me not long ago when somebody mentioned Daniel Bryan still does a headbutt similar to Chris Benoit, the diving headbutt off the top rope. And they had moments at Chris Benoit at WrestleMania 20 when he had that dramatic, emotional moment with Eddie Guerrero when they both held the titles together. Eddie, the WWE champion, Benoit, the world champion. And they had Daniel Bryan with both belts, and that tremendous moment where he defeated 2 men in the main event, plus Triple H at the opening match. So, I'm not saying Daniel Bryan 10 years from now we're going to be reviling him because he's going to kill Brie or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. But I hope he gets out of the business before the business completely destroys him physically. And this is something that I think not just professional wrestlers, but professional athletes have to be worried about. This whole concussion thing. And it could dramatically change the way sports are played in this country and in this world. And I really should do a podcast on this. I think I have done something similar to this, but I think I really should focus on what would happen to sports if it's found that concussions are a lot more severe long-term than we are led to believe. And I think American football really, really, really is at a crossroads right now. They don't even really know it. So, and wrestling is the same deal. It would not surprise me in the next few years if they find a way to where they minimize the potential of concussions. I think they're going to eventually get rid of tables, ladders, and chairs, the so-called hardcore style. Which, to be honest with you, I think is kind of passe anyway. I mean, how many times have we seen on practically every episode of Raw, every pay-per-view, you see them going after the announce table? It's almost like when they don't do it, when it's left intact, you're kind of like, oh my God. So that's what the WWE really needs to focus on, is getting away from this, the extreme matches. You don't need to see the stairs picked up and smash somebody's brain in every other week or so. You don't need to see tables smashed. You don't need to see steel chairs. You don't need to see sledgehammers or Singapore canes or... by the way, Singapore canes are actually called kendo sticks in the real world, but that's a long story. You don't need to see people run through barriers or put through announce tables. I think that if they really took a time to go, okay, let's slowly get rid of this. Let's phase it out to where when it really does happen, it's a very big deal. Now it's like, the Spanish announce table is almost a joke because pretty soon if it's out there, somebody's going to get put through it. So, and I think that the day's coming when Vince and Triple H are going to have the conversation where Triple H says, look, your ideas aren't working anymore. Let me have full control and take this for a ride. And I think when that day happens, things are going to get better because Vince McMahon is out of... He doesn't understand pop culture. He doesn't really understand today, and a lot of stuff that goes on, his sense of humor doesn't translate. Do you really need to make a joke about an inside joke about President Obama because you don't like the guy? First of all, if you're smart, you stay the hell away from politics and sports entertainment. So I think Vince and Triple H will eventually have that conversation where Triple H goes, you know what, I need to take control. You're out of touch. Things aren't working anymore. Let me have the ball and let me run with it. So I think that's going to come. Stephanie and Triple H as on-screen characters, as the Authority. I'm tired of them. And maybe it's me at my age, but I saw this all before. It's like an overdone version of the McMahon-Helmsley era. We saw this 14 years ago. It wasn't really that great then, and it's not really that good right now, in all honesty. Because it doesn't seem like there's going to be an end to it. It's almost run for a full year. And it just comes to the point where if there's no end in sight, why even start it? I mean, to me, the best thing they could do is have a moment where, CM Punk comes back and becomes head of the company. Figurehead commissioner, and Triple H and Stephanie are kayfabe fired, but in reality they basically stay backstage. They don't come out. So, I don't know. To me, it's just... I'm tired of GMs. I'm tired of the authority figures. I wish we'd go back to the days where you had a figurehead WWE president like Jack Tunney, which you rarely saw. And when you did see him, it was in a moment that, it really mattered. It was a big, big deal. Now it's like, who cares about the authority figures? They're just... It's old. It's tired. It's done. I'm tired of it. So... NXT. I'm going to finish up with NXT. NXT gets a lot of publicity from the internet wrestling community because it's a throwback in a sense. It's taped. It's an hour long. You don't get that much of it, not compared to the 5 hours you get of WWE programming every week, and then you add on Main Event, which is 6, and then Superstars, which I don't know how many people actually watch Superstars anymore, to be honest with you. And they really need to retool that, in my opinion, I think Main Event should be... Superstars should be that show they do after Raw. Or at the very least, on the West Coast they do after Raw. On the East Coast they do before Raw. And have big matches. Have 3 matches, 2 mid-card matches and 1 main event. Same, upper mid-card main event. Maybe even have Cena do a main event ever so often. But NXT is a throwback in the sense that you don't see that many title defenses by Adrian Neville. You don't get tired of people. And that's the thing. When you see the same superstars each week, you eventually get tired of them. Whereas in the old days, if you have an hour of WWE programming, you only see Hogan every other week. He might wrestle on your TV on Superstars every 2 or 3 weeks. So, what's become of NXT? Here's the thing. If I'm Vince McMahon, I get over this hump. I get the ball rolling again when subscribers start picking up, when business starts picking up again, when you get through the hump, and when you realize that original programming is where you need more than just the Performance Center in Orlando. I would slowly start bringing back the territory system and put it on WWE Network. Have a territory in Chicago, have CM Punk be the guy behind it, be a trainer there. Put a territory in Dallas as a hotbed. Put a territory in Charlotte. If I own TNA, you know what I do? I would move it from Tampa Bay, or from Orlando, or wherever the hell it's going at now. I'd put it in Charlotte. Bojangles Coliseum, the old Charlotte Coliseum, seats about 9,000. You could get a lot of if you really ran great cards there and ran an old school kind of show, you could get people to come out and watch it and focus on the content of the show. So, but that's just me. But NXT I like because it's a throwback. It allows the performers, and in many senses, I think what would really help Raw and SmackDown is have less of Cena, and have longer matches. Have a much stronger mid card. Here's something I would do. Don't have the WWE Championship, WWE World Championship defended on Raw or SmackDown at all. Leave it strictly for the pay-per-view. And don't even have the World Champion wrestle except maybe once or twice a month at most on either show. Have them cut a promo. Have them, and maybe even have a situation where they're going to Japan and defending the title. Maybe set up a situation where they are working with New Japan or something like that, where it's a big deal. But what do I know? I'm just a schmuck that does this. But in my opinion, I think that would put an emphasis back on the U.S. title, on the Intercontinental title. It'd help give you time to put the World title back. Divas title, I would say make that mainly Raw. I don't know. I think that the more I think about it, the more that there needs to be some changes. I don't know if you want to merge the U.S. title with the Intercontinental title, and then maybe have a sort of a TV title, which really, if you had the forerunner of NXT was Florida Championship Wrestling, and they had a thing called a 15-minute title, which is essentially a TV title. And I think if you had that on WWE programming, I think it would be a really good thing. Well, we're running out of time, so I got to head out of here. We'll do this from time to time to talk about wrestling. Just shoot the breeze with wrestling. So hope you enjoyed the podcast tonight. Folks, take it easy. Stay cool. It's supposed to get even warmer this week. Mid to upper 90s. Maybe the rest of the week. So we'll see what happens. Anyhow, take it easy, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.